Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Victober, a venerated BookTube event that celebrates the literary endeavors of the Victorians. I love Victober. I love watching all the videos. And I've stumbled upon a little Victober tradition of my own here on this channel. I recently got this, the Penguin Book of Victorian Verse. It's a big, beautiful thing. I found it at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston in perfect condition, whereas my other copy of this is battered and falling apart. And that discovery happened right at the time when Victober was starting. So I naturally thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to read a Victorian poem? And then I fell into the habit of doing that. I'm now reading you a Victorian poem a day. And it's been a blast for me. What a great way to use an anthology, too. So today, since it's a beautiful, bright, sunny Saturday, I thought we'd read about death. And this is a poem. It doesn't have a title, but it's by Hartley Coleridge, who was Samuel Taylor Coleridge's oldest son and a weirdo, and who led a very colorful and very active literary life. It's always been a little bit disappointing to me that in America, anyway, there's never been a great big biography of Hartley Coleridge. I think I probably understand why. In America, it's probably a Herculean task to get a publisher to agree to a biography of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, one of the greatest poets in human history. It's going to be even harder to get anybody to greenlight a biography of his weird son, Hartley, that nobody's ever heard of. But nevertheless, Hartley Coleridge wrote a lot in his life and led a very colorful, moving. His personal story is very colorful and very moving. So I'm glad to find him in a Victorian anthology. I don't know why he didn't title this poem, but it's all about death. So I thought that would cheer up the day. So it goes like this. Think upon death. 'Tis good to think of death. But better far to think upon the dead. Death is a spectre with a bony head, or the mere mortal body without breath, the state foredoomed of every son of Seth, decomposition, dust, or dreamless sleep. But the dear dead are they for whom we weep, for whom I credit all the Bible saith, dead is my father, dead is my good mother. And what on earth have I to do but die? But if by grace I reach the blessed sky, I fain would see the same, and not another, the very father that I used to see, the mother that had nursed me on her knee. And I think you can see from the jouncy, elbow-jugging rhyme scheme there of that poem that what I hardly need to say, which is that Hartley Coleridge was 1/100th of the poet that his father was. It's catchy in a way, and it's interesting in the windows that it opens up on Christian theology, on Christian belief. What is the afterlife? You know, I've always had these questions. I could go on forever asking them. The narrator of this poem wants to see his father that he loved. He wants to see the mother that bounced him on his knee, and presumes that he will. And the gist of the poem is that we should be thinking about the dead rather than thinking about death. That's either dust or decomposition. And that by inference probably shouldn't engage a whole lot of our attention. And that part of the poem I would certainly agree with. You don't spend any amount of time agonizing about the 14 billion years that you weren't alive, that you weren't around, that you weren't here to think about it. You don't think about those years at all. And as a result, you probably shouldn't think about or care or worry about the 14 billion years that are coming where you're not going to be here. I think most people, when they get down to brass tacks, if they were being honest with themselves, they would say it's not so much being dead that they fear. It's the process of dying. Because usually going out of this world is as protracted, humiliating, and messy as coming into this world is. The reason that it weighs on so many people's mind is because we don't remember what babyhood was like. I think if we did, we certainly would have fewer Victorian saccharine rhymes about the innocence of childhood. Childhood is a state of impotence and yearning, of anger and frustration. But babyhood, if we could remember it, would be even worse. Just even worse. And death, especially once you start to advance in medical technology, is going to be a lot like that. It's going to be mediated by technology unless you're lucky enough to write the end on your life's magnum opus at the age of 70 with only a few aches and pains and your mind as clear as a bell. You write the end on your magnum opus. You've just that morning Zoom chatted with all of your loved ones to tell them how dear they are to you. You step out into the street to get your day's lasagna and get wiped out by a truck. You don't even have the time to feel pain. You are completely obliterated on the street, and that's that. No one could possibly say that you died young, And no one could say that you died unfulfilled. They'll grieve, of course, it'll be a shock, but that's a lucky way to go. The unlucky way to go is to outlive your medical insurance, outlive your savings, outlive all of your friends, outlive all of your loved ones, outlive all of the desire to be alive. But I don't know how we got on. How we got on that. I'm enhancing the gloom of the subject as if it needed any enhancement. So I don't know what to call that poem. That's just a death poem by Hartley Coleridge. And I'm not going to read any other Hartley Coleridge this month. We have a lot of other people to go through. I stopped on it when I was going through the volume this morning because I find Hartley Coleridge interesting. I've read, I think, pretty much everything that he's written, but I've never read a book about him. I think that's fascinating, that there can be major literary figures. I think you'd have to call Hartley Coleridge in his own way a major literary figure. Certainly in his own day, people talked about him, quoted him. It's interesting to find a figure like that who doesn't have any biography, and I noticed there's a prevalence of that in the Victorian era. Huge numbers of Victorian writers, dramatists, huge numbers of Victorian painters, sculptors, even minor Victorian politicians who don't have biographies, at least in America. A little wearisome. A big, huge, boisterous era that could stand a lot more inquiry. But anyway, that is our Victober for today. That's our Victorian poem. And we'll see what we encounter tomorrow. I promise it won't be doom and gloomy. I'll try and find something funny. Thank you, BookTube.